So, have you ever just dreamed of owning your own piece of the Alaskan wilderness? I mean, completely off the grid. Well, today we're going to dig into a guide that lays out a roadmap to do exactly that. But here's the twist, it shows you how to completely bypass the traditional banks. Yeah, we're diving into a really unique path to owning land in the last frontier.
This is the exact question the source material kicks off with. And man, is that a powerful one, right? It just gets right to the heart of that feeling, that desire to escape, to find something more raw, more self-reliant. This is really the core motivation we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, so why Alaska? I mean, what is it about the last frontier that just captures our imagination? Let's break down the unique appeal that this guide really zeroes it on.
Well, the guide really breaks the appeal down into a few key things. First up, you've got the promise of just unparalleled privacy. We're talking acres and acres of solitude, just for you. Then there's that deep, deep satisfaction of self-reliance, the challenge of building your own systems for power, for water, the whole shebang. And hey, there's a practical side to it too. The source points out that as demand for remote land keeps growing, it could actually turn out to be a really solid long-term investment.
And for anyone who's seriously considering this, the guide actually points to some specific areas. We're talking about places like the Matsu Valley, the absolutely beautiful Kenai Peninsula, and of course, the vast interior wilderness. Apparently, these are the real hotspots for finding that perfect piece of land, whether it's for a small cabin or a full-on homestead.
Okay, but here's the thing. There's this huge hurdle that keeps this dream just out of reach for so many people. And really, it all comes down to one thing: financing. Trying to get a traditional loan for a raw, undeveloped piece of land, well, it's notoriously difficult. And really, this is the heart of the problem. If you think about it from a traditional bank's perspective, a remote plot of land with zero utilities, well, that just screams high risk. It's not a predictable, safe investment like a house in the suburbs. And the guide, it really identifies this exact hesitation from lenders as the #1 barrier it's designed to help you get around. So what you end up with are two very different paths. On one hand, you've got the traditional bank route. That means strict credit requirements, long, drawn-out waiting periods, and just mountains of paperwork. But then, on the other hand, the guide highlights this alternative, owner financing. And it's basically the exact opposite. Often no credit check, a much faster process, and a simple, straightforward deal. All right, so let's dive into the solution that the source lays out. This is the key, the mechanism that makes this whole off-grid Alaskan dream a reality for so many more people. The real magic here is that you're making a deal directly with the person who's selling the land. This can open up so many doors, especially if you're self-employed or retired. Situations that traditional banks just don't know how to handle. According to the source, the terms, everything from the down payment to the monthly payments, can be way more flexible. It just gets rid of all those roadblocks that lenders love to put up. Okay, so let's say you've done it. You've secured the land. Now comes the next big challenge, actually living on it. And step one is always going to be power. The guide offers a really practical, down-to-earth blueprint for how to generate your own electricity. And what I love about this is just how clear the steps are. This isn't some ridiculously complex system, You just start with a manageable number of solar panels. Then you hook them up to a battery bank to store power for those cloudy days. You add a generator for backup, just in case. And finally, an inverter turns all that stored energy into regular electricity for your home. It's literally a blueprint for energy independence. The guide even gets into specific technical tips, recommending a 48-volt battery system. Now, this is one of those little practical details that comes from a real-world experience. It just points to a more efficient way to store and use all that solar power you're collecting. And the guide makes it super clear that going off-grid does not mean you have to give up on modern life. Not at all. With things like energy-efficient appliances, LED lighting, and this is a big one, satellite internet from services like Starlink, you can be totally connected and comfortable even when you're deep out there in the wilderness. Of course, when you move to Alaska, you're not just getting a piece of land. You're getting new neighbors. And some of those neighbors can be very, very big. Living respectfully and, more importantly, safely with the local wildlife is totally non-negotiable. It's just part of the deal. The guide lays out some absolutely essential, potentially life-saving practices here. And listen, this isn't optional stuff. We're talking about using bear-proof containers for everything, making noise on trails so you don't surprise anything, and always carrying bear spray.
These are just the fundamental rules for coexisting safely and, being a good, responsible steward of the land. And that responsibility also extends to, following the actual rules. The source is really clear on this one. You have to check all the state and local borough regulations before you even think about building anything. This is absolutely crucial for protecting the natural habitats of the wildlife you're moving in with.
All right, so we've looked at the dream, the hurdles, and the nuts and bolts of it all. Let's boil this whole thing down to the single most important takeaway from this guide.
It really all comes down to this one concept: owner financing. It's that direct deal between a buyer and a seller that just cuts out the big institutional no. The source presents this as the key, the thing that can finally unlock the Alaskan dream for people who've got the passion, but maybe not the perfect credit score that a bank demands. And so we're left with this one final, really crucial question. The guide shows us a clear path to owning the land, but it's also brutally honest about the hard work involved. Everything from wiring your own solar panels to learning how to live with grizzly bears. So the question is the freedom of the frontier really worth all of its challenges? I guess that's the ultimate question you have to ask yourself.